Hi guys, it's M here. So today I want to talk about something a bit different. I want to talk about UFOs. So I've been as I've said in other videos, I've been researching the conspiracy world for 18 years now. And I started off like many people that are seeking the truth, hearing about UFOs. So this might give a bit of background into how I came about looking into this world, and also, how I got to be in the truther community. So when I started 18 years ago, the internet was a completely different place. I'm talking about before Facebook. When I started looking into these things, I was amazed. The first sort of things I saw was around alien abductions and UFOs, like many people when they look into these realms of alternative truths. So it was a very different world back then. So nowadays, when you turn on the TV, you will go, if you go to the History Channel or Channel Blaze, I don't know the channels in the US, but in the UK, you can go through your TV guide, and there is no doubt on one of the channels a documentary on UFOs or alien abductions. You can find it everywhere, and this is because there is a soft disclosure going on. So 18 years ago, you didn't have that. If you had to look for it to find it. These days, you have shows like Ancient Aliens. You just have to turn on your TV, and you will see a UFO show somewhere. It doesn't make it a joke. This is soft disclosure. And I wanted to make this video because this is the sort of thing I always wanted to talk about, and I got mixed up with fake kings and con men within the truther community. But actually, there's a lot more to me. So this might add another dimension for you to look into why I do these things and why I'm interested in these things. So yeah, UFOs. I've had I've had actually many experiences with seeing flying objects that I couldn't identify, if you want to put it like that. So they were called UFOs. Now, about 5 years ago, they changed the terminology, and now it's UAPs. It's now unexplained aerial phenomenon rather than unidentified flying objects. But this has been around for a very, very long time. And not only has it been talked about in the media since the Roswell incident back in 1947, all the way through to alien abductions, with the first most famous one being Betty and Barney Hill, to today where you have MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network, that documents all of these sightings of UFOs. So yeah, like I say, today it's very different. Back then, you had to really look to find this information, and it's so saturated now. And not only that, the last few years with all of this, there's so much misinformation thrown in there that it became difficult to research for this video. Even looking into Project Blue Book, there was so much from the show Project Blue Book I had to go through to try and find real information. And that's become a problem in the truther community, that it's now difficult to pinpoint the stuff that even 10 years ago was easier to find if you looked for it. Now it's just very, very saturated. So yeah, UFOs. In this video, I want to talk about a recent admission from the Pentagon that they have been studying debris from downed or crashed UFOs. And they've been studying this, and they've even identified a metal from these investigations called nitinol, which is a memory metal, which when you crush it up or deform it, it returns to its original shape. And the links to that, to the Roswell story, I then want to go into the Roswell story. So apologies for those who are veterans in looking into this sort of stuff, but I will give a bit of background on that, and I'll give the links of why, what I was looking into and what I find really interesting around the whole Roswell situation, which has now become the most famous UFO story, and Roswell has become a mecca for ufology. I also want to talk about how UFO sightings are documented by MUFON, and were being documented by the government with the Project Blue Book. I want to look a little bit deeper than that, to look at how UFOs have been documented throughout our history, especially in pictorial evidence. So from cave paintings to the Renaissance and a boom of art that had flying objects in the sky. But what I want to end the video on is talking about my own experiences sighting UFOs, or UAPs as they now call them. So that should be very interesting. I'll try and leave some timestamps in the description of the video so that if you don't want to listen to me talking about Roswell, you can skip ahead. And also, if you just want to hear about my experiences with UFOs, you can find those easily. So guys, here is my video on UFOs. So for those of you who have been paying attention to this sort of stuff, you will know that the Pentagon has recently released a few videos of UFO sightings that have now been declassified and released to the public.
My gosh!
The Pentagon declassifying 3 videos of what they're calling unexplained aerial phenomena.
Look at that thing! It's rotating.
2 videos showing objects spotted by Navy fighter pilots during training flights in 2015. And this one from 2004 showing an object about 40 feet long hovering about 50 feet above the water. Weird, right? So why are they being released now? A spokesperson saying, after a thorough review, the department has determined that the authorized release of these unclassified videos does not reveal any sensitive capabilities or systems. DoD is releasing the videos in order to clear up any misconceptions by the public on whether or not the footage that has been circulating was real. Harry Reid, former senator of Nevada, home to the infamous Area 51, tweeting, "I'm glad the Pentagon is finally releasing this footage, but it only scratches the surface of research and materials available." But the DoD not offering much more info, saying the aerial phenomena observed in the videos remains characterized as unidentified. Retired Navy Commander David Fravor was piloting the jet in the 2004 video.
And it's moving around left, right, forward, back. The radar immediately starts getting jammed. All of a sudden it takes off.
So under a request from the Freedom of Information Act, admissions have been made by the Pentagon, and this is even being reported in the mainstream media. So as I've just shown you, this information has come directly from the Pentagon under a Freedom of Information request. However, it is being reported in the mainstream media, and I'll read a little bit of this article that's come from the Sun newspaper. Stunning admission. Pentagon admits it has been testing wreckage from UFO crashes and findings may change our lives forever, expert says. The Pentagon has admitted holding and testing wreckage from the UFO crashes in a bombshell Freedom of Information letter shared with The Sun. Researcher Anthony Bragalia wrote to the defense agency, the DIA, requesting details of all UFO material which they hold and results of any tests that have been carried out on it. He wrote, "This could include physical debris recovered by personnel of the Department of Defense as residue, flotsam, shot-off material or crash material from UAPs." In the response shared with The Sun, the DIA released 154 pages of test results that include reports on a mysterious memory metal called nitinol, which remembers its original shape when folded. Bragalia said it was a stunning admission from the US government, and documents reveal that some of the retrieved debris possesses extraordinary capabilities, including the potential to make things invisible or even slow down the speed of light. He told The Sun, "The Pentagon has admitted holding and testing anomalous debris from UFOs." So here you go. Here's the Freedom of Information request that was sent forward to the Pentagon, and then their reply. I will leave a link in the description so you guys can go and check this out for yourself and read the actual letters and the response from the Pentagon. They have been able to learn some things about the materials of construction which hold tremendous promise as futuristic materials which will change our lives forever. He said the first made the request in 2017, which took 3 years for the DIA to fulfill, after it was revealed that the Pentagon had been studying UFOs under the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. The article mentioned that anomalous debris from UFOs which are now called UAPs, as I said, was being analysed by a private defence contractor. Material evidence such as UFO debris has been a focus of my research. My Freedom of Information Act request was specific, seeking the results of UFO UAP debris, not material already known to science. So here you go, you got a picture of Major Jesse Marcel with debris from the Roswell UFO crash in 1947. So I'm going to speak a little bit about that now. So the most famous UFO crash thing, where it all became big news, was in 1947 when there was a crash on a ranch in Roswell, New Mexico. And US Air Force Major Jesse Marcel was the first on the scene, the first attending on the scene. And he found lots of debris, which he believed to be of unusual origin. And if you can see in this picture, he's holding up this material. He was made to have this sort of photograph shoot with the material, and you can see if you look at his face, he's kind of holding up this material, and he's kind of, you can see in his face he's kind of saying, yeah, I'll hold this up for you like you asked, but this is not what I found at the site. Bragalia believes some of the material that is being tested could have come from the notorious Roswell Incident in 1947, in which UFO crashed in New Mexico. The inclusion of an advanced technical report on nitinol is curious, Bragalia said. Nitinol is shape memory alloy that remembers its original shape when folded or crunched and snaps back seamlessly and instantly. This memory metal characteristic was reported by many witnesses at Roswell. However, the agency has held back certain details about the materials, including any information about that they could be of alien origin, stating in the letter, I have determined that some portions of 5 documents must be withheld in part from disclosure. They are omitting information on the chemical and elemental composition of the material, as well as its origin, Bragalia said. They have omitted the names of the involved scientists as well, but I have since learned some of their names and will be contacting them. The DIA letter first shared on Bragalia's blog reveals that the testing was carried out by Bigelow Aerospace, one of the Department of Defense's private contractors based in Las Vegas, Nevada. The company laid off all its staff at the Vegas plant last March due to the toll of the pandemic, and it's not known where the UFO material may now be kept. Mysteriously, Bragalia said that anyone he approached who used to work at the plant refused to comment to him. Yeah, and this is something that would usually happen with things that they try to keep under wraps. People get threatened and get non-disclosure agreements to not disclose certain information. All former personnel have refused me any real comment, he said. I suspect the material has been returned to the Pentagon. The UFO researcher is planning to launch an appeal to obtain some of the redacted information in the coming months. So yeah, why I found this particularly interesting, the Roswell crash was one of the first points of my research.
And he sent Jesse Marcel, the fellow in the middle, who was an intelligence officer, over to talk to the sheriff and to Mac Brazil and to go back out to where this site was and to pick up whatever was there. They went back out and they loaded a bunch of stuff into a truck. It didn't amount to a lot. It looked, there were some metallic things. There were some things that looked like balsa wood. There was other stuff that was in this as well. And then they brought it back to the base. Eventually, this material goes to the 8th Air Force commander, Roger Ramey, who's up in the Dallas area. And there's a interesting sort of press release, maybe not a press release, more like a verbal conversation that Marcel and the local information officer had with the local newspaper in Roswell. And it ends up creating this particular stir. On the afternoon of the 8th, it says that the Roswell Army Airfield captures flying saucer on a ranch in Roswell region. And the key piece to this, now this is an afternoon newspaper from the Roswell Daily Record, the intelligence office of the 509th Bombardment Group at Roswell announced at noon today that the field has come into possession of a flying saucer. Okay, well now this sets off everybody literally around the world. As the media starts to get interested in this, they publish stories, you hear radio reports, there's all kinds of activity that's a result of this. Everybody who can get there sends their journalists into the area to start investigating this further. All of this within less than 24 hours is turned off. The next day, Roswell Dispatch, which is a morning newspaper, publishes big headlines, Army debunks Roswell flying disc, as world simmers with excitement, and indeed they did. The officers then turn around and say that the disc is really a weather balloon. The operative quote is, Roswell bounced into the international news scene yesterday when a flying disc was reported 85 miles northwest of town and 25 miles from Corona by W.W. Brazil. Now that's the rancher. And until the 8th Air Force headquarters in Fort Worth announced that the disc was nothing more than a weather balloon, the entire U.S. and England seethed with curiosity over the report, and the Roswell Telephone Company was busy handling calls from every city in this country and several from across the sea. So they debunk it within just a few hours and in this particular speculation. When the afternoon paper in Roswell is published on the 9th of July, they've got more information, and they've now talked to General Ramey, who's up at the 8th Air Force, and he shows them what they found. Among other things, he said that the mysterious objects were a harmless high-altitude weather balloon, not a grounded flying disc. Excitement was high until Brigadier General Roger M. Ramey, commander, cleared up the mystery. That's pretty much the end of it. For the time being. They did publish some photographs. Let me show you some of those. Here is intelligence officer from Roswell, Major Marcel, who's looking at the stuff, and you can see it looks kind of like mylar. And there's some sticks and things that are down toward the bottom. And you can see these sorts of things over here, and those are very light sort of wood, or so it's, or it was reported as such. Let's put it that way. Here you can see a similar, it's taken place at the same time in the same building, the same chairs are in the background, and that's General Ramey looking at the same stuff. What this actually was, by everybody's account that anyone can come up with, is that it was a part of a balloon that wasn't a weather balloon at all. There was good reasons to keep that a secret. It was a part of a Project Mogul effort. And Project Mogul was an effort by the Department of Defense, actually before this time, the War Department, to create the ability to find out if the Russians have a nuclear weapon. And so what they wanted to do was to send into the upper atmosphere and float it over toward the Soviet Union a sensing device that could detect sound waves from an atomic bomb test, trying to determine if the Russians had the bomb. Now, by the way, they would get the bomb in 1949, and it's because of this kind of capability that we found out about it pretty quickly. They did a whole bunch of these tests, and they obviously deployed it then on a real basis as well a little bit later on. There were successors to this as well in terms of efforts to figure out what the Soviet Union was up to. And this particular picture is actually a pretty good one. There was a launch of one of these balloons on the 4th of June from 1947, went out of Alamogordo, which wasn't all that far to the west of where this wreckage was found. What you'll find periodically is sensors, more balloons, various types of reflective material, and then this bottom hits up to here and goes all the way down. You see all of these balloons, another big set of materials here, and then more here and all the way down to the bottom. Now this stuff is a metallicized sort of material, not unlike what was seen in the photograph.
Now, I have no doubt that Project Mogul was real. During the Cold War, America was very paranoid about what the Russians were doing around nuclear testing, and so they probably did have this Project Mogul. However, I highly doubt what Major Jesse Marcel found that day would have been something as simple as a weather balloon, or a black project weather balloon. He would surely know the difference. Now, what's so shady about this whole thing, about this material that they found and this weather balloon excuse is that Major Jesse Marcel, was of a high position in his field, and for him to have mistaken the material. If you look at the material, it's nothing more than, it looks like tinfoil paper-backed with balsa wood attached to it. There's no way that he would look at that material and think it was something otherworldly. Even the rancher that found it, even if the common man would find this sort of material, you'd think, oh well, that's something definitely man-made, and that wasn't the case. And I remember seeing these pictures of Jesse Marcel, Major Jesse Marcel, holding up this debris, and he clearly looks uncomfortable. He clearly looks like he's like, is this a joke? I mean, just look at his face. But I also remember a interview that was done with his son, Jesse Marcel Jr., and I'll show you a little bit of that now, where he talks about what his father brought home that day.
This is what I would like to show you. In here, this is the photograph of the debris that was seen in General Ramey's office at Carswell Air Force Base in Fort Worth, Texas. This is my father holding up what is very obviously parts of radar target with balloon debris. In here, you see balsa wood fragments. You have actually parts of the balloon envelope in of itself, and you have what looks like paper-backed metal foil. And to emphasize this, this is not what was seen on the floor of our kitchen that evening or that late early morning hours in 1947. This is totally different.
The implication is that Major Marcel may have been ordered to take part in a cover-up that involved switching the material from Roswell for a common weather balloon. General Ramey and the Air Force now discounted their earlier press announcements that they had found a flying saucer. The story was officially dead.
My dad was the base intelligence officer here at the Roswell Army Airfield in 1947. When we first were stationed at the air base, we lived in base housing. And about 6 months later, that's when my dad bought the house here in Roswell. There's the house.
You see it?
On the corner.
Oh, right on the corner.
This is a ranching community, not too many people here at that time. Apparently something crashed on the Foster Ranch, which is about 75 miles northwest of Roswell. The rancher didn't know what it was. The sheriff of Chaves County did not know what it was. So anyway, they contacted Colonel Blanchard, who was the base commander at the Roswell Army Airfield. So he sent my dad out with a CIC agent to investigate what this was. And the rancher took him out to a debris field where something splattered against the ground, leaving a wide swath of debris, maybe half-mile long, three-quarters of a mile long, or half-mile wide. So what they did was to gather up respective pieces of this and then drive it back into Roswell. As it happens, our house was on the way to the air base. Even though it was late in the evening, early in the morning, my dad wanted to show my mother and myself remnants of something that crashed out there. The kitchen was just where that white wall is there. He had pre-positioned material on the kitchen floor, and he got my mother and myself up to look at this. I think my mother was up first though. So I walked into the kitchen and I saw all this junk on the floor. I thought, what in the world is he doing, getting me up at this ungodly hour? So anyway, he says, look at this. Again, I think he used the words flying saucer in connection with the debris. So I started looking at the foil. I thought, wow, what is this? This is kind of a strange material here. And I didn't try to bend it or tear it or deform it. My dad did, though. And when he got back to the base, and he said it could not be permanently dented. One of his guys worked with him, took a sledgehammer and tried to bend it. No permanent deformity with it at all. So this is very strange material. The next thing I looked at was there's some little beams on the floor too. So I picked one of them, it looked like metallic. The strangest part of that was there was some writing or some sort of a writing along the inside surface of this. When I first saw that, I thought, oh, this looks like Egyptian hieroglyphics. But closer inspection, it was not hieroglyphics. It's more like geometric symbols, like oblate spheroids, triangles, truncated triangles, of various shapes along the inside surface. They're violet, purple hue, semi-reflective of light. In other words, if you held up like that to the light over your shoulder, they would reflect back at you. to some degree. And that was I guess the most weird part of the whole thing there. Now that's where the control tower for the air base was. There should be a big hangar down this way where they brought the bodies and the debris field first. My dad, apparently under the direction of Colonel Blanchard, flew this debris to Fort Worth, where General Ramey, who was an 8th Air Force commander, to show him. And apparently the law was laid down at that time that no word was to be spoken about this. So when he got back from Fort Worth, he sat my mother and myself down and said, look, treat this as a non-event, didn't happen, don't ever talk about this again. And since 1947, I saw this strange material, not of earthly manufacture, the way I recall it, and my dad recalled it too. It made me feel that we're not alone, that there's others out there. This is something that came from outer space.
One thing I'm certain of, being familiar with all our activities, that it was not a weather balloon, nor an aircraft, nor a missile. It was something else, of which we didn't know what it was. There were just fragments strewn all over the area, an area about 3/4 of a mile long and several hundred feet wide. So we proceeded to pick up the parts. A lot of it had a lot of little members with symbols that, to me, I call them hieroglyphics because I could not interpret them, could not be read. They were just like symbols of something that meant something. These little members could not be broken, could not be burned. I even tried to burn that. It would not burn. See, that stuff weighs nothing. It's not in there thicker than tinfoil in a pack of cigarettes. See, I tried to bend the stuff. Says it will not bend. Says we did all we could to bend it. It would not bend. Says we even tried making a dent in it with a 16-pound sledgehammer. He says, still no dent in it. The newsman saw very little of the material, a very small portion of it. And none of the important things, like these members that had these hieroglyphics or markings on. They wanted me to tell them about it, and I couldn't say anything. And when the general came in, he told me not to say anything, that he would handle it.
So back in 1952, there was a study started by the government. It was called Project Blue Book, and it was one of a series of systematic studies of unidentified flying objects conducted by the United States Air Force. So what was Project Blue Book? Project Blue Book had two goals: to determine if UFOs were a threat to national security, and number two, to scientifically analyse UFO-related data. Thousands of UFO reports were collected, analysed and filed.
1952 was one of the biggest years of UFO sightings in U.S. history. The culmination of that year was incredible sightings over the weekend of July 19th, 20th, and 26th, 27th.
Washington International was picking up UFO returns. People were reporting sightings of strange lights in the sky.
As a result of the Codon Report 1968, which concluded there was nothing anomalous about UFOs, and a review of the report by the National Academy of Sciences, Project Blue Book was terminated in December 1969. The Air Force supplies the following summary of its investigations. Number 1. No UFO reported, investigated and evaluated by the Air Force was ever an indication of threat to our national security. Number 2. There was no evidence submitted to or discovered by the Air Force that sightings categorised as unidentified represented technological developments or principles beyond the range of modern scientific knowledge. And number 3, there was no evidence indicating that sightings categorised as unidentified were extraterrestrial vehicles. Now, by the time that Project Blue Book ended, it had collected 12,618 UFO reports and concluded that most of them were misidentifications of natural phenomena, clouds, stars, etc., or conventional aircraft. According to the National Reconnaissance Office, a number of reports could be explained by flights of the formerly secret reconnaissance planes U-2 and A-12. A small percentage of UFO reports were classified as unexplained, even after stringent analysis, and that is important. Now, after the closing down of Project Blue Book, a civilian-created network called MUFON, or Mutual UFO Network, was created, and this was run by civilian volunteers, and they did the same thing, which was to investigate UFO sightings. MUFON today operates in 43 countries around the world and has documented thousands upon thousands of UFO sightings and experiences. You know, since the dawn of human civilization, you can find pictorial evidence and written accounts of viewing flying objects in the sky, all the way from cave paintings and depictions to, you know, the Hindus that they called the Vimanas, these things that they saw in the sky, and they based designs of their temples on these things. You know, even going up to more modern Renaissance art and religious art, you can find these things. And this is what I was saying about information being saturated. You know, even 10, 15 years ago, when I was looking for these sort of things, I could find hundreds of examples of paintings, you know, drawings, depictions of these flying things in the sky. And when I went to research for this video, you know, I could only find a handful, the most famous examples. Now today, with modern technology, you're getting a lot of accounts of people seeing and videoing these lights in the sky. I've seen, well, maybe 10 to 15 examples of lights in the sky, and they will quite often, they might make some weird movements, and they will just fade out and disappear. These days, people are too busy looking at their phones. They don't look to the skies, and I really encourage all you guys to you know, look at the stars when you're out there. You know, go out there, stargaze. It's amazing what you might see. You know, I speak to people younger than me, and more brought up in this modern age of technology, this new world where everyone's just staring at their phones and they're not looking at the skies. And I've had some conversations with these people, and they've said they've never seen a shooting star. That amazes me. I've seen hundreds of shooting stars.
If it was a meteor thing, it wouldn't be drifting, and it would go fast. Like that. Let's see what the line is. Remember you saw the line is? No. They were like this. Like there. What could that be? I don't know. My phone can't catch it. This city's wrong.
I actually thought it was like higher, like it was an airplane.
Or it disappears.
Or it disappears. Did you get video?
Yeah.
What the heck is that? That was like, it looked much lower to the ground, and then it got much higher.
Okay, so let's just
That's
watch.
That's definitely an unidentified flying object. What the hell?
As well as this maybe dozen sightings that I've seen in my lifetime of lights that would move. Sometimes they wouldn't move, sometimes they'd stick in the sky, but would slowly fade out and disappear. This is something that I've seen, like I said, maybe a dozen times, and I cannot explain them. I've also learned to discern some of the common things that what I see as strange lights could be. So one of the most common things when you are seeing an airplane is beacon lights. You'll see flashing lights each side of the wing. Sometimes you'll just see one beacon light. It depends the direction it's coming from, but you can quite easily tell an airplane, and obviously there is one constant direction. The other thing that's most commonly mistaken for a UFO is satellites. We have thousands up there in our night sky now, and satellites can be as bright as stars, and the way that you can tell a satellite from any other light in the sky is they will have a constant direction. You will see them moving at the same speed through your sky and have a constant speed, constant direction, and they can be as bright as stars. So that's one other thing to be aware of. I'm no fool, and these lights, they do seem strange. They could be a number of things, but they are unidentified in its very nature, because they are not any conventional aircraft. They're not satellites. So what are they? What are these lights that having strange movements, and then slowly fading out and disappearing. I've seen that so many times. So there's been a couple of other occasions where I've seen lights in the sky, and these have been a bit more extreme and interesting. And on these occasions, they have moved at high speeds in directions. I've seen them move in triangular formations. I've seen multiple lights in the sky before. You know, so this is maybe 5, 6, 7 times I've seen these sort of things. But, you know, I have on one occasion seen a triangle made at very quick speeds, at huge distances, judging by the distance and the size of the light. But, you know, making a very quick movement, and then another quick movement, and then another quick movement. And on a couple of these occasions, then seeing them seem to move further away at extreme speeds until they disappear within a second, very quickly. Now these very much so are, you know, what I would call a UFO, without having anything else to describe that. That these things, there's no explanation for that, or no explanation under our understanding of our current technology, or at least our current technology that the public is aware of. So there are the bulk of my experiences. I have had one standout experience, and this was in daylight. Now, at this time when I had this experience, I was a teenager. I was working in a shop, and there was glass windows. So I was working on a checkout. You know, I was very young, and I was working on a checkout. But at this time, as I said, I've been researching this stuff for a long time. At this time, I was looking into these sort of things. I was looking into UFOs, strange things in the sky. I was starting to get into the habit of looking up at the sky. Now, usually I'll do this at night. I wouldn't expect to see anything in the daytime. It was a busy, maybe Saturday afternoon. Lots of people waiting at my till to be served. And I was looking out of these, as I do, you know, every now and then, just glancing out of these windows right next to my checkout, and to see on a Saturday afternoon, maybe an air balloon, maybe a plane streaking across the sky, maybe some chemtrails coming from them. So I mean, I must be going back way over 15 years here, but I was already looking into these things, and I saw something spectacular in the sky, and I'd only briefly heard about something like this. I saw a metallic object. It was going a constant speed, but this thing was, it looked very high up and very big. I have no way to gauge the height. I've no sort of experience with flying or altitudes, but this thing looked very, very high up, and it looked big. And it was a metallic object, and it was in the shape of a cigar, and it was going at a constant speed. So I saw it going across the sky, and I wouldn't usually do this, and you can't do this, and you can't leave a till, you know, full of cash. You know, you're not supposed to leave it. I could have probably got fired for this, but when I saw this as a young lad, I kind of stood up from the till. There was probably 3-4 people in the queue. I stood up from the till and just walked towards the window and just stared at the sky. And I must have done that maybe 5 seconds before I became self-conscious and could overhear, you know, the people waiting at the checkouts asking what's going on. Excuse me, can I pay for my goods? And you know, at the time, you know, I just walked back to in a daze. I felt, you know, almost in some sort of hypnosis after viewing this slowly going across the sky, but really looking to see. I could see it was metallic. I could see that it was cigar-shaped. I could even just about make out that it was kind of almost rounded at one end and almost sort of straight at the other end. So I've got a video. I'll put that over this. This is what I saw. This is looks exactly like what I saw that day. But yeah, unfortunately, I had to kind of snap back to reality. I didn't want to lose my job. I was only a teenager. You know, I think it was my first job, and I didn't want to be fired. And also there was a pressure of having perhaps 4 people waiting, wondering what the hell's going on. And I kind of snapped back and was like, right, I'll get back to my seat. And I tried to watch it, you know, scanning goods, just watching out the window. And I just saw it kind of go out of my line of view from these big glass windows. And yeah, that was it really, because it had gone behind buildings that I could see. So even if I were to go, excuse me, I've got to have a break now, and go out there, even if I went outside, you know, I'd have to run God knows how long to try and then pick it back up again. And then I'd probably have lost my job. But that was my standout experience of viewing something that I could not explain. But the funny thing is I was looking into these things, and I had heard of cigar-shaped UFOs at that time, but you know, I was very much dipping my toes in the shallow end back then and looking into the Roswell and things like that. But of course I went and researched after this, and I found lots and lots of people, lots of whistleblowers talking about this exact same metallic cigar-shaped craft.
There's one New Year's Eve, my family and I were in the house. I looked through the window and I spotted an unusual object in the sky. I shouted to my family to come and look. We all ran outside and down the road to take a better look. The UFO was a cigar-shaped and quite bright. It was moving really slowly, then after about 30 seconds it stopped and suddenly sped away much faster than any plane. That's a few people seeing the same thing. One person I can understand might see something they might not think, but if a group of people all see something cigar-shaped...
So guys, I'd love to hear what you think about this video. Should I make more of this content? What do you think that I saw that day? What do you think? What do you think these things in the skies are that are no doubt there, that have been documented throughout our history? They're there. So what do you think they are? You know, if they're not extraterrestrials, if we've not had that contact, what do you think they are? Do you think they're demons? Do you think that they are from another dimension? Or do you think, you know, that they are simply of our own making? We know that back in during World War II, it is a fact that the Nazis were developing flying saucers. They were developing flying saucer-shaped crafts. Designs are out there for all to see that they were testing these things. So, you know, is that what they saw at Roswell? Are these man-made hidden projects from us? Is this futuristic technology which they are not revealing to us at this time? Is it futuristic technology because we have back engineered things that we've found, crafts that we've found? Was this a real crash at Roswell? Did we then retrieve these materials? I mean, the Pentagon are admitting that there is such a thing as these unidentified flying objects. They have retrieved materials that are, you know, not man-made. So that's got to be, by all indication, you know, there is something to this, and I truly believe that, you know, we are now at that age of soft disclosure, and these things have been put out on our TV for the last 10 years, and now we don't even think, oh yeah, a lot of people are thinking, oh, these wacko UFO shows. It's kind of in your face. And so when these things come to light, it's going to be like, well, why didn't you tell us? Why didn't you make a big thing about it? No, we put it on your TV sets for you know, decades. We put it in your newspapers. We put it in the Sun newspaper that the Pentagon had said they're studying these materials. You took no notice. You were too distracted by what was going on, the political, you know, minefield out there, which is now just become, well, something else in itself. I won't go into that. But, you know, what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. Guys, look up at the stars, look to the skies, and follow MC Groove Truth.